The rain had turned the highway shoulder into a ribbon of mud when Mark Hale saw the woman leaning against a black sedan, one hand gripping her swollen belly and the other trembling against the car door. And in that instant, his foot hovered over the brake while his mind raced with everything he stood to lose if he stopped. He was already late for work again, already skating on the thin ice of warnings and whispered meetings, already a single father who could not afford another mistake. And yet something in her face, pale and strained beneath wet strands of hair, asked a question that went deeper than time cards and paychecks. What if this were your sister, or your wife, or the mother of your child, stranded on a cold road with fear tightening around her chest? What choice would you make if doing the right thing might cost you everything? Mark pulled over, heart pounding, the rain soaking through his jacket as he ran to her side. He did not know her name then. He only knew she was very pregnant, alone, and fighting waves of pain she could barely stand through. He helped her sit, called for roadside assistance, flagged down another car for help, and stayed with her longer than he should have, longer than his phone alarms begged him to. By the time the tow truck arrived and another driver agreed to take her toward the hospital, Mark's clothes were soaked, his hands shaking, and the clock on his phone flashing a time that made his stomach sink. He drove away knowing the day had already gone wrong, yet strangely certain he had done what he could live with when he looked in the mirror that night. Mark's life had been a quiet battle for years. His wife had died suddenly, leaving him with a 6-year-old son named Jonah and a silence in their small apartment that never fully lifted. Every morning was a race against the clock, packing lunches, tying shoes, dropping Jonah at school before driving across town to a logistics company where Mark worked as a mid-level supervisor. He was good at his job, steady and reliable, but grief had made him slower, more human, and his boss had begun to notice the minutes piling up. The warnings came softly at first, then sharper, edged with frustration. Mark promised himself every night that tomorrow would be better. Tomorrow, however, arrived with a pink slip. Mark was called into a glass-walled office, the city gray beyond the windows, and told his lateness showed a lack of commitment. There were policies, expectations, and examples to set. He tried to explain, his voice tight, speaking of an accident on the road and a pregnant woman in distress, but the explanation fell flat in the air between them. Compassion did not appear on the spreadsheet. By noon, Mark was carrying a cardboard box to his car, his badge deactivated, his future suddenly a blur of bills, school fees, and sleepless nights. That evening he sat at the kitchen table while Jonah colored dinosaurs, the hum of the refrigerator loud in the silence. Mark stared at the wall, feeling like he had failed twice, once as an employee and again as a provider. He replayed the moment on the road, the woman's strained breathing, the way she had clutched his arm as if it were the only solid thing in the world. He wondered if kindness was a luxury meant only for people who could afford consequences, and whether teaching his son to be good would someday hurt him the same way. Days passed, then weeks, each one heavier than the last. Mark applied everywhere, took temporary shifts, sold his old guitar, and learned how thin hope could stretch without snapping. Jonah sensed the change, growing quieter, hugging his father longer before bed. Mark prayed at night, not with eloquent words, but with exhaustion and honesty, asking for a sign that doing the right thing still mattered in a world that seemed to punish it. The sign came on an ordinary Tuesday morning when Mark was sorting mail in the apartment lobby for extra cash. A black SUV pulled up outside, polished and out of place, and a woman stepped out, moving carefully but confidently, a newborn carrier in her arms. It took Mark a moment to recognize her without the rain and fear. She smiled, a tired but radiant smile, and his breath caught as memory rushed back. She had found him. Her name was Rebecca Lawson, and as she spoke, Mark learned that the day on the highway had ended with an emergency delivery and a healthy baby boy named Thomas. She had searched for him afterward, tracked his license plate, and learned about his firing. What Mark did not know, what no one at his old job had known, was that Rebecca was the sole owner and CEO of the logistics company he had been dismissed from. A woman who had built it quietly, letting managers run daily operations while she focused on broader visions and her family. Rebecca told him she had been reviewing reports from her hospital room when she saw his termination notice. The reason had cut deeper than she expected. She spoke of policies that had drifted too far from purpose, of companies forgetting that people were more than numbers. She looked at Mark not with pity but with respect, as someone who had chosen humanity when it mattered. Change did not come like a miracle falling from the sky. It came slowly, deliberately. Rebecca reinstated Mark, but not as a token gesture. She reshaped training programs, adjusted flexibility policies, and held meetings that forced leaders to confront the cost of their rigidity. Mark returned to work humbled and wary, afraid to hope too much, yet feeling something new grow in his chest. He worked harder than ever, not from fear, but from gratitude, carrying with him the memory of that roadside moment as a compass. At home, life softened. Jonah laughed more, the apartment filled again with small joys. Mark told his son about the woman on the road, about helping even when it was hard, and Jonah listened with wide eyes, absorbing a lesson no textbook could teach. Mark understood then that his son had been watching all along, learning what kind of man he was becoming through the choices he made when no one was supposed to see. Rebecca kept her distance, respecting boundaries, yet her presence lingered in the culture of the company and the quiet confidence of a man who had been given a second chance. Mark never forgot how close he had come to losing everything, or how a single act of kindness had rippled outward in ways he could never have planned. If you have ever stood at a crossroads where doing right felt like doing wrong for your own survival, pause here and share your thoughts in the comments, because your story matters too. And if this story truly touched your heart, gently reminding you of the power of kindness, second chances, and unseen connections, please like, comment, share, and subscribe so more hearts can be reached.